Well, here we go. I swear I hear hula music in the background. It is the Minnesota Bound podcast spring break special. The stories behind the stories. This week's episode of Minnesota Bound is all about Ron Sherck's favorite spring break getaways, going fishing in Aruba and El Salto, all these faraway places that make us forget the snow and cold here in Minnesota. And I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but I get you 2 weeks in a row. Aaron Ochtenberg, our director of photography, back in the house.
Well, I'm sure you would have rather had Ron, but guess what? He's off on a spring break adventure, so here I am.
When I started, whatever it was, 16, 17 years ago at Minnesota Bound, Ron kind of shook my hand and made this gentleman's deal that during the winter, I would go north to shoot stories and he would go south. I figured someday that might change.
Somebody asked me the other day, how many ice fishing stories have you shot with Ron? I think I couldn't think of one.
And if your fingers got cut off in a saw accident, you would still be able to count. None. 1, 2, 3. Oh my gosh. Well, all right. So we're talking spring break stories, and you are here not by accident, but
I just stumbled into the podcast.
You crawled onto that fateful flight that day, Suriname Airways flight 423, headed from Miami to Suriname. And I suppose our first quiz of the day should be, can you tell us where Suriname is? Engineer Brandon? No, he's shaking his head like, nope. Suriname? It's south. Way south.
Well, not way south. South America.
Which is way south from here. Could you walk there?
Sure, but it's on the northern edge of South America. So, I mean.
It's a haul. So back in the, I don't know, what was it, early 2000s, we were documenting for a show on the History Channel called Monster Quest. And they asked us to go to Suriname to find all the blood-curdling piranhas on the planet. And so you and I are headed to the capital city, Paramaribo, and we get on this flight to fly to Suriname, which I've never been there. I
never heard of it.
Pointed out on a map.
Until we found out we were going there.
And we're flying, and we land in a faraway place called Aruuba, which is the whole point of today's episode. I fell in love with Aruba, and we're going to talk all about Aruba. But on this late night, the plane lands, and what happens to us?
Well, it's been a few years ago, but to the best of my memory, we...
because you try and purge negative things.
Yes, we land in Aruba for, I believe, a little layover, or like change of planes, correct?
I think it was just to drop off and pick up people.
Okay, sure. That makes sense. So we get there and we're sitting on the plane for a while, and as happens many times, there's something up with the plane. So like, well, we're going to get everybody off, so we go sit in the gate for a while.
Which has us on edge because at the time, Suriname Airways happened to have one of the worst records in the aviation industry. So we sit in limbo, right?
Yep. Just sitting in the terminal, like I'm sure many people have something wrong with the plane. They got to check it out, which you want them to, especially if they have a bad flight record. And so we're sitting there for a while, an hour becomes 2.5, and you've checked out every little shop in the place and walked around, and
it's late. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We still have a 3.5 hour flight to Suriname.
Yep.
They give us cheese sandwiches to make us feel better.
Yeah, and at some point they put us back on the plane, but I feel like we had to like leave customs and go through customs, and they put us back on the plane, and then they took us back off the plane.
And those customs people had gone home for the night.
That's right. So we got stuck in this, like the in-between space between the customs little channels and the, in between countries. So we were just sitting on the floor hoping for something to happen, eating little cheese sandwiches.
And it was like Dutch cheese, so it was, Aruba is a Dutch colony. And so that cheese was just like sour, and it was just not a good night. Long story short, 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, something like that, they finally throw us on buses, drive us through darkness to a Holiday Inn.
I did not remember it was a Holiday Inn.
What do you think this is? We go into the room, sleep for how long?
Well, I don't think we knew. We just went to sleep, and they said expect a phone call. And once you get that phone call, you got to be like on the plane in 30 minutes. So you're trying to sleep, and the phone rings. It's like the bus is leaving the hotel in 15 minutes. Get on the bus.
It was right before sunrise. We get on the bus. We slept like 2 hours. And you've got that awful, hazy, sick feeling. But we're driving through Aruba. It's sunrise, and I'm looking around saying, oh my gosh, this place is an absolute oasis. So we get back on the plane. We fly off to Suriname. That's a story for another episode. My Lord.
2 or 3 episodes.
I did not think I'd survive that trip. But the whole time, I'm thinking Aruba, Aruba, Aruba. Wow, I'm kind of curious about this place. And growing up, you always heard about Aruba, and it was some fancy, faraway place that you never visit. And I fell in love with Aruba and had to go back. And that has become my spring break destination. Don't go every year, but if we go every couple of years, it's a pretty special place. And here's why. First off, it's down off the coast of Venezuela, like 15 miles off the coast. So just to give you some sort of perspective on where it is in the Dutch Caribbean, or what they used to call the Dutch West Indies. And the Dutch found it because of the trade routes and all that. And it was a rock. It was a desert. And the island never flourished until they came up with a desalinization plant, which is a plant that takes water out of the ocean and turns it into fresh water. It turns out some of the very best water on planet Earth is coming out of this darn plant. People come from all over the world to fly to Aruba to tour this darn desalinization plant. But the point is, once they had fresh water, the island flourished. It was no longer a white rock cactus desert. It was green and lush, and the hotels came up, and all the famous people from Hollywood visited in the 50s or whatever it is. And now it is just such an amazing place to visit, because when you go to Aruba, you can tell you are in another country. I love that it's sort of that Caribbean feel, but it's got Dutch influence. I wouldn't say it's Americanized. There aren't McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chickens everywhere. But if you want to take a break from more traditional foods and get a hamburger someplace, you can do it. And we fell in love with Katie and I, my wife. We've been several times. Now we take the boys, and I have fallen in love with fishing in Aruba because of its very simple form. I'm not paying hundreds of dollars to local boat captains to take us out. My son Brady and I do it on the cheap, right? We pack a couple of travel rods and fish. And for me, that is kind of fishing's best form, right? So simple.
So are you fishing on a boat, or are you just fishing off the beach?
Off the beach. Now in Aruba, we've figured out a pattern. It's great. So there's a hotel zone on, I can't tell you what direction it is, the side of the island we stay on. How's that? And there's a famous lighthouse there called the California Lighthouse. And so if you set your alarm clock before sunrise, you get up, you take a couple of fishing rods, go to the front desk. It's about, a 3-mile hike from the place we like to stay up the beach to where we like to fish. But you can get a cab for $10. The front desk will call. It's very safe there. Oddly enough, one time, total side story. I get back from fishing, go to see Katie. She's down at the pool, and I think, oh, where's my wallet? Weird, my wallet's missing. Oh my gosh, I left it in the cab, right? Oh my gosh, all our travel checks and traveler's checks and our money and all that stuff is gone. Nope. Returned the wallet, had fallen out of my pocket, brought it to me. Like, just maybe that's why I like the place, because I had a good experience. But I like to fish. I used to be a fly rod guy, right? Almost exclusively, like just for the romance of it. I got to take a fly rod. I got to catch a bonefish in the Caribbean on a fly rod. But now I love to take just some Rapalas, shiny Rapalas, husky jerks, and saltwater X-Raps. And, I pack a 7-foot travel rod, like a medium light to medium spinning rod, put 14 to 25 pound braid on it. You can cast those baits like half a mile, right? And the tides, depending on what the tides are doing, the fish are around.
So what kind of fish? What are you catching?
So anything, right? We just go fishing. We don't bone fish. We don't fish for jacks or tarpon fish. We just go fish. Barracuda love shiny things. And Storm, they make this little plastic. It's called a 360. And they have saltwater versions, and they're swim baits, and they have shrimp patterns. And you can cast those out. We've actually caught bonefish on those little shrimp patterns. And, it's funny, a bonefish, right, will burn up a reel. They grab and they will run 100 yards in 2 seconds flat. And you think that fish is like a 15-pounder. And you get it in, it's like a 13-inch fish. They're just amazing. But barracuda, I like barracuda because they're like pike of the saltwater almost,
Yeah.
They're not too picky.
Big predators. Yeah.
So even spoons, I'll take some small spoons. Again, you can cast them forever. They make a lot of flash. And when the sun starts to get up, just to the point where it's kind of coming over the horizon and those baits start to pick up that flash, it seems like you can always catch fish. And it's magical, right? It's spring break. Like, we are trying to get out of Minnesota to go someplace to forget about all the things that impact our lives. And for me to stand out there at sunrise, most folks aren't up. There are a couple runners out, It's funny because the cruise ships that come into Aruba always seem to arrive right before sunrise or right at. So it's fun because you'll get out there, you'll see lights, and an hour later, here's this massive ship coming into the harbor.
The what?
Harbor. That's a reference for old Roger Whittaker fans out there.
All two of them.
that are still alive. Oh, man. But I don't even care if I don't catch anything. Just to be there in that moment. Yeah. And it's funny because my phone is always so full of photos from those mornings because they're just still and calm and quiet. And that's the magic of fishing. Although it's funny, the last time I was there, I was out on one of those moments, enjoying the silence. And all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, you're Bill Sherck."
So hard to be you.
Well,
everybody knows you.
You go, really? And it turns out it's a gentleman from Lakeville, Minnesota, who has sons in the Minnesota Fishing League. And so we hung out and traded a lot of fish stories over the rest of the trip. And we kind of keep in touch. But this guy was up early with his sons to fish, kind of to enjoy the same sort of sensations of mornings. And then, by 9 o'clock, the beaches are full, the windsurfers and the kiteboarders are out, so things start to get busy. But that's kind of how I fish on these sorts of trips. And we've never even rented a vehicle to circle around. You know, you always hear that the other side of the island, which, I don't know, to give you some perspective on the size of the island, I feel like Aruba is, I don't know, 15 or 18 miles long and maybe 4 or 5 miles across, maybe 6, something like that. But you get to the far side and then you can fish areas over there that are actually out of the wind. That is one thing about Aruba. It is very windy, right? They talk about the Dutch West Indies. Well, everyone went there because the wind blew their ships there, right? So the wind always blows, almost borderline howls, but the fishing is fun. Another favorite area I love to fish, and I used to do it more with the fly rod. There's a famous shipwreck out front of the hotels, and the hull sits in like 4 feet of water. So the skeleton of the ship is still out of the water. You can see the ship from all over the place. And I love to wade out and kind of sight fish there. I'm a cheap date. You know, I'd love to rent a skiff or a boat and go out there and be above water's level looking down to see what you could see out there. But, you know, my wife always tells me spring break trips aren't fishing trips. So that's how I squeeze it in. But anyways, Aruba has become one of my favorite spots. Clean water. You don't have to worry about drinking the water and getting a stomach ache. You know, the food is amazing. The people are amazing. Public transportation. We take the buses into downtown for, 50 cents type stuff. They have free trolleys and trains running around in downtown that you can ride. You go see the cruise ships and you can buy all the trinkets. It's really kind of a fun destination.
Do you have to buy a fishing license?
There are no fishing licenses. They do not exist. In fact, you ask and they kind of go, huh? Right? And there are deep water trips. There are lots of charter boats there in the harbors, or as you call them,
the harbors.
Another back to Roger Whittaker. That you can rent for whatever, a couple $100 a day to take you out to the deep water stuff. But I like to wade and sight fish and just play the game that way.
Don't have to commit an entire day to it.
No.
You can just do it for a couple hours and then do family stuff.
And I think, that just happens to be one of my favorite spots, but that is why this week's episode of Minnesota Bound is such a special one. Ron Sherck has been all over the place. He has been to every island, every saltwater coast and beach. And this week's show highlights a few of his favorite spots, of which one of those stories is Aruba. So maybe you and I need to get back on an airplane, Suriname Airways, and head back to Aruba sometime.
Does anybody else fly there?
American,
okay.
Delta,
Let's
and
maybe
Sun
try
Country.
Let's see if those work out first.
We'll save the Suriname story for another episode, but I hope that gives you some insight. And if you're ever looking for a fun little spot to get away or do a spring break trip with the family, or even just do a little fishing because you happen to be going to Aruba, maybe that will direct people the right way. This show doesn't just happen. Minnesota Bound, the podcast, the stories behind the stories. We've got some key partners who help us get this on the air every week. I would like to thank Rapala, Hewitt Docks, Connecticut, and as well our good friends at Starbank and, of course, Ice Castles. If you can't take spring break, get in an ice castle and go out to a frozen lake, right?
Hopefully your spring break was in February, because in March I don't think you can have an ice castle on the ice anymore.
Well, you can't leave it out there, right? I think you can pull it out for the day, can't you? Aaron Ochtenberg, our director of photography, thank you for joining us today. That was quite a night stuck in the concourse in Aruba, but it's funny where life takes you, right?
Yeah, it sure is.
I was not planning on spending any time in that country on that trip, and now it's one of my favorite spots. thanks to you and our good friends at Suriname Airways.
Yes.
That about does it for us today. We will be back next week with the Minnesota Bound podcast. Thanks for listening. See you in Aruba.